Let me guess. You've been thinking too much. Not just about one thing, but everything. Your future, your past. That one conversation you wish you could take back. The next step you're too paralyzed to take. And now your mind feels like a maze with no exit. You didn't click on this video for tips. You clicked on it because you're tired of living in your head, and you want a way back to something real, something clear. In this video, we'll explore the psychology of overthinking, why it thrives in uncertainty, how it disconnects you from the present, and most importantly, how to shift from being trapped in your thoughts to reclaiming your inner authority. We'll draw on insights from cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness, and existential philosophy to chart a path forward, not out of fear, but through grounded awareness. What is overthinking? It's what you're doing right now, questioning whether you're overthinking. And ironically, that doubt is part of the pattern. Thinking in itself isn't the problem. It's one of the most incredible things we do as human beings. We reflect, we analyze, we imagine. But there's a point when thinking stops being helpful and starts becoming a trap. That point is when your thoughts no longer bring clarity, but tension, anxiety, and a sense of being stuck in your own mind. You know the feeling. You replay a comment you made at lunch, wondering if it came off wrong, or maybe you're projecting into the future, over-preparing for a conversation that hasn't happened or might never happen. Your mind becomes like a movie theater you can't leave, looping the same scenes with no resolution. And the worst part? You think the only way out is to think even more. If you could just figure it out, maybe you'd finally feel at ease. But that's the catch. The more you chase control through thought, the more control you lose. What begins as an attempt to prepare becomes a cycle of paralysis. You're not moving forward, you're circling, caught in a loop where every possible outcome plays out, but none of them bring peace. Overthinking isn't a flaw, it's a response to uncertainty. But when it becomes your only strategy, it turns the unknown into a storm, and you forget that stillness, not more thinking, is often the only way to see through it. But what if this isn't a failure of willpower? What if your struggle to just stop overthinking isn't proof that you're weak or undisciplined, but instead a sign that your mind is trying to protect you, not from danger, but from something far more subtle? Uncertainty, that deep, uncomfortable feeling of not knowing what comes next, of standing at the edge of change with no script to follow and no guarantee of the outcome. You see, your brain is wired to love patterns. It finds safety in routine, predictability, and control. So when life throws you into the unknown, whether it's a career decision, a relationship shift, or just an ordinary moment that suddenly feels fragile, your mind does what it's always been trained to do. It starts to scan, to replay the past, to rehearse the future, to build mental models that feel solid, even if they're just illusions. This isn't dysfunction, it's a survival reflex. You're not broken, you're just reacting to chaos in the only way your mind knows how, by trying to manage it, to control it, to think your way out of discomfort. But here's the catch. Control and clarity aren't the same thing. Control tries to eliminate uncertainty. Clarity learns to live with it. Control says, I'll feel safe once I know everything. Clarity says, I can be grounded even when I don't. And sometimes the path to clarity isn't through more thinking, but through softening your grip on needing every answer. That's where peace begins. Here's the hard part. We don't overthink because we're foolish or broken. We overthink because, in some twisted way, it makes us feel safe. If we can just prepare enough, if we can just replay that moment one more time, if we can anticipate every possible outcome before it happens, then maybe, just maybe, we won't be caught off guard. Maybe we can avoid the sting of regret. Maybe we won't feel powerless again. Overthinking becomes our armor. It gives us a false sense of readiness, like if we suffer in advance, we won't have to suffer later. Like if we can mentally rehearse every version of the future, we can somehow outmaneuver pain. But here's the paradox. This endless loop of preparation isn't protecting you, it's imprisoning you. Because it's not really the unknown that's hurting you, it's your unwillingness to sit with it. It's the tension between what you can't control and your desperate need to. That's what creates the storm, not the future itself, but your resistance to letting it unfold without rehearsing every line. The truth is, clarity doesn't come from predicting everything. It comes from releasing the need to, from stepping into the unknown with the courage to be unprepared, and trusting that whatever happens, you'll meet it with presence instead of panic. That's not recklessness, that's real strength. If any part of this feels familiar, if you're tired of spiraling into thought but don't know how to step out, consider subscribing. This channel is a space for people reclaiming their clarity, not by forcing their mind into silence, but by learning to listen differently. Let's take a step back. In the world of cognitive therapy, there's a foundational idea. You are not your thoughts. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but sit with it for a moment. Because if that's true, then the flood of anxious thinking, the spirals of what if and why did I, they're not you. There's something happening to you, like weather passing through the sky, like waves rising and falling on the surface of the ocean. Beneath all of it, there is a deeper stillness, a self that watches. Mindfulness teachers echo this truth in a softer, more intimate way. You don't have to believe everything your mind says. You can hear a thought, and instead of reacting to it, you can notice it, name it, even gently question it. And that's where the shift begins. When you stop blindly identifying with every passing worry or fear, something powerful happens. You create space. You observe the spiral as a pattern, not as truth. You catch yourself mid-thought and say, there it is again. That old fear of being unprepared, that old story about not being good enough. It doesn't mean the thought disappears, but your relationship to it changes. That space between you and your thought, that's the seed of inner freedom. The moment you realize you can see your mind rather than be your mind, you reclaim the authority to decide what's worth following. And from that space, healing begins, clarity begins, and slowly, the storm inside starts to quiet. There comes a moment, so quiet it's easy to miss, when something within you shifts. You stop being dragged around by your thoughts, and instead, you begin to simply witness them. Like watching clouds drift across the sky, you notice a thought arise, but you no longer jump to chase it. You hear your mind whisper, "What if it all goes wrong?" And for the first time, you don't answer, you don't panic, you pause, you take a breath. And in that breath, something powerful happens. You recognize the thought not as a fact, but as a pattern, a habit, a voice you've heard before. And just like that, you create space. A sliver of freedom, enough to remind yourself that you are the one watching the storm, not the storm itself. Because overthinking feeds on urgency. It screams that now, right now, you must solve everything. It convinces you that unless you untangle every memory, unless you pre-write every future outcome, you won't feel safe. But what it never tells you is this: to live is to stand fully in the present. To dream is to wander gently into the future, and to learn is to kneel before the past and listen to what it came to teach. When we overthink, we collapse all three into a single blur of anxiety. We turn memories into punishments. We turn the future into a threat, and the present, our one true home, gets lost in the noise. But this moment right here is not a mistake. It's where your breath is, where your strength lives, where clarity begins. So when your thoughts try to pull you in every direction at once, let that quote guide you. Let it remind you that dreaming is human, remembering is wise, but living everywhere at once, that's what exhausts us. You don't need to silence your mind. You just need to bring it back to this breath, to this step, to now. Of course, this won't come without resistance. Even when you start to wake up to the pattern, your mind will still beg for certainty. It'll keep pushing for control, whispering that if you just think a little longer, plan a little harder, rehearse one more time, you'll finally feel okay, you'll feel safe. But the truth is, that sense of safety never arrives. And in the meantime, life keeps moving. You'll still second guess yourself. You'll still have moments of doubt. You'll still feel that familiar pull to delay decisions, to stall action until everything feels right. And while your mind spins, the world around you gently drifts out of focus. You miss the quiet gestures of care from someone you love. You overlook the warmth in a moment could have grounded you. You become so consumed by imagined futures or relived pasts that you're barely here at all. That's the real cost of overthinking, not just mental paralysis, but the slow erosion of presence. It steals your ability to feel life as it's happening. It chips away at joy, at intimacy, at aliveness. It fragments your attention so much that even rest doesn't feel restful. Your body holds the tension, tight shoulders, shallow breath, restless nights that leave you exhausted in the morning. This isn't about weakness, it's about being human. But still, you deserve better. You deserve peace that isn't tied to solving everything. You deserve relationships where you're fully present. And most of all, you deserve to experience your life, not just analyze it. So yes, there will be resistance, but every time you return to the moment, despite the noise, you reclaim something sacred, yourself. So here's the truth. You cannot kill the unknown. You cannot outsmart uncertainty. No matter how many scenarios you rehearse, no matter how many what-ifs you run through at 2 a.m., the future will always contain variables you can't predict. And that's not a flaw in your thinking, it's the nature of life. But what you can change is your relationship to all of it. You can stop trying to control every twist and turn and instead begin to build trust in something deeper, your own capacity to face what comes. It begins not with force, but with awareness. You start small. You observe the thought instead of becoming it. You name the fear instead of letting it run the show. Then you ask yourself gently, honestly, is this useful? Is this real? Is this kind? That simple pause creates space. Some people even create rituals around it. 10 minutes of structured worry time, then a conscious release. Others write their spirals down, breathe through them, or speak them aloud like a mantra. This is uncertainty. I don't need to solve it all right now. And in those moments, something shifts. You're no longer trying to eliminate discomfort. You're learning to stand calmly in its presence. That's resilience, not the absence of fear, but the quiet confidence that you can move through fear without abandoning yourself. Because real strength doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from knowing you'll meet whatever comes with grace, breath, and a steady heart. You return to the same life, the same job, the same relationships, the same unanswered questions waiting in the corners of your day. The unknowns didn't disappear while you were doing all this inner work. They're still there, just as unpredictable, just as open-ended. But something is different, and it's not the world. It's you. You're no longer treating uncertainty like an enemy to defeat. You're not bracing against every possibility, trying to outthink fate. Instead, you begin to walk with the unknown, like a companion, not a threat. You stop demanding that the future explain itself before you take a single step. You start to move, slowly, intentionally, not because you're certain, but because you're clear on what matters. That's where real clarity lives, not in your ability to predict what's coming, but in your ability to respond to it from a grounded place. One small decision at a time, one breath, one moment of courage. You begin to live less from the head and more from the center of who you are. And in that step, there is a quiet kind of peace, not the peace of finally knowing all the answers, but the peace of no longer needing to, because life was never meant to be fully controlled. It was meant to be lived with openness, with intention, and with enough trust to keep going, even when the path ahead is still unfolding. You don't have to silence your thoughts to find peace. You just have to stop believing they hold all the answers. Overthinking isn't your enemy, it's your invitation to slow down, to come home, to reclaim the space between stimulus and response. So tell me in the comments, what's one thought you're ready to stop chasing? Until then, trust yourself to face the unknown. You were never meant to have all the answers, only the courage to keep showing up.